I stared at my phone, reading the text message from my mother for the third time. Carolyn's wedding will be just a small, intimate ceremony with only immediate family. There's really no room for everyone, sweetie. Hope you understand. The words blurred as tears pricked my eyes. I wasn't everyone. I was her daughter, Carolyn's sister. But apparently, I didn't count as immediate family anymore. As I sat there in my Seattle apartment, feeling the familiar sting of being the forgotten one, something inside me snapped. I opened my laptop, typed flights to Iceland, and before I could second-guess myself, I booked a ticket for the exact weekend of the wedding. I told no one. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and started packing, my hands moving automatically while my mind spiraled through 28 years of being second best. Growing up, Carolyn was always the shining star. 3 years younger than me, she was the daughter who could do no wrong. When she got a B+, our mother Patricia framed her report card. When I got straight A's, I heard, "Well, of course you did. You're the serious one." Carolyn got a full ride to college from our parents. I worked 3 jobs to pay my own way through design school, because by the time I graduated high school, Dad's business had hit a rough patch, and suddenly there was no college fund. Funny how the money reappeared 2 years later, when Carolyn was ready for university. I folded a sweater and remembered all the times I'd swallowed my resentment. When Grandma Helen got sick, I was the one who moved back home for 6 months to help care for her. I fed her, bathed her, sat with her through the long nights. Carolyn visited twice, but at the funeral, people kept telling Carolyn how hard it must have been for her. No one seemed to notice I looked like I'd aged 5 years. I organized every family gathering. I remembered everyone's birthdays. When Mom needed help planning Dad's surprise 50th birthday party, who did she call? Me. I spent 2 weeks coordinating everything, baking his favorite chocolate cake from scratch, inviting all his old friends. At the party, Dad gave a speech thanking Mom and Carolyn for making him feel so special. My name never came up. But this, the wedding, this hurt in a different way. When Carolyn got engaged to Trevor 6 months ago, I'd been genuinely happy for her. Trevor was a lawyer from a wealthy family in Portland, polished and ambitious. Not really my type, but Carolyn seemed thrilled. I'd assumed I would be her maid of honor. We'd shared a room growing up. I'd braided her hair for her first school dance. I'd held her when her high school boyfriend broke her heart. 3 months ago, Carolyn had a bridesmaid brunch at some upscale restaurant in San Francisco, where she'd moved after college. I saw the pictures on Instagram. 8 women in matching silk robes, holding mimosas, laughing. Her best friend Amber, front and center with a maid of honor sash. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even told it was happening. When I finally worked up the courage to call and ask about it, Carolyn's voice had been cold. "Beth, I just don't think we're that close anymore. You live your life. I live mine." I wanted my bridesmaids to be people I actually spend time with. The words had felt like a slap. I'd been too stunned to respond properly. Just mumbled something about understanding and hung up. I'd cried for 2 hours. Now, 3 months later, I wasn't even invited to the wedding itself. I texted back a simple, "Okay, have a beautiful day," and nothing more. I didn't tell them about Iceland. I didn't tell them anything. As I zipped my suitcase closed, my phone buzzed. A group text notification. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. My cousin Jennifer had accidentally included me in a message meant for the bridesmaids. "Can't wait for Saturday. The vineyard is going to be gorgeous. I can't believe there'll be over 150 people there." My hands started shaking. Over 150 people at the small, intimate ceremony. My mother had lied to my face. This wasn't about space or budget. I had been specifically, deliberately excluded. I sat down hard on my bed, the betrayal washing over me in waves. My family hadn't just forgotten about me. They'd actively decided I wasn't worth including, then lied about it to make themselves feel better. I looked at my suitcase, packed and ready by the door. My flight left in 4 hours. I stood up grabbed my bag, and walked out of my apartment without looking back. The plane touched down in Reykjavik 14 hours later, and I felt like I was landing on another planet. The October air was crisp and clean, the sky a pale gray that somehow felt peaceful rather than gloomy. I collected my bag and took a taxi to a small guest house I'd booked in the old part of the city. The owner, a cheerful woman named Kristen, showed me to a tiny room with a view of Mount Estja in the distance. "First time in Iceland?" she asked. "First time doing anything just for myself," I answered, surprising myself with the honesty. She smiled knowingly. "Then you're in the right place." I spent the first day just walking. No plan, no schedule, no one needing anything from me. I wandered down Lagavegir, the main shopping street, popped into small boutiques filled with Icelandic wool sweaters, stopped at a bakery, and ate a cinnamon roll that tasted like childhood should have felt. I climbed the steps to Hallgrímskirkja, the enormous church that dominates the Reykjavik skyline, and stood at the top looking out over the colorful rooftops. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe fully. That evening, I found a small cafe near the harbor and ordered fish stew. I was sketching the view of the boats in my notebook when a woman about my age sat down at the next table. She had kind eyes, and that effortless style Scandinavian women always seem to have. "You're an artist," she said, nodding at my sketchbook. "Not really. I'm a graphic designer. This is just for fun." "It's lovely." She extended her hand. "I'm Sigrid." We started talking, and before I knew it, I'd told her everything. The wedding, the exclusion, the years of being invisible. Sigrid listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. "I know this story," she said finally. "Different details, same pain. My family, they treated me like the problem child, because I didn't want to be a doctor like my father and brothers. I wanted to paint. They stopped inviting me to things, said I was too flaky, too unreliable. It took me 5 years to understand. They didn't reject the real me because they never saw the real me. They rejected the version of me that didn't fit their story." Her words settled into my chest like stones dropping into deep water. "What did you do?" I asked. "I stopped trying to fit. I moved to Reykjavik, opened a small gallery, painted what made me happy. Now my family sees my success and wants to reconnect, but only on my terms. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve." We talked for another hour. When we parted, she gave me her phone number. "If you need a friend while you're here, call me." Over the next 2 days, I explored Iceland like I was trying to fill myself up with beauty. I drove the Golden Circle route, stood in awe at Gullfoss waterfall, watched geysers explode into the sky at Geyser, walked between tectonic plates at Thingvellir. I soaked in the secret lagoon and felt my tension dissolve in the warm water. I posted photos on my Instagram, which was set to private, but which my family followed. Waterfalls cascading over black rocks, steam rising from hot springs, the mountains turning pink in the late afternoon light. I didn't caption them. I didn't need to. Back in California, it was Friday. The rehearsal dinner would be happening. I got a few texts from extended family. Confused messages. "Aren't you supposed to be at the rehearsal? Why aren't you here?" I didn't respond. That night, lying in my guest house bed, listening to the wind rattle the windows, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real, deep peace. I set my phone to airplane mode. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow I was going completely off-grid. Just me and Iceland. But when I woke up Saturday morning and turned my phone back on to check the time, my screen exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, multiple voicemails. My heart pounded as I opened the messages. They were all from my family, increasingly frantic. "Mom, Bethany, where are you? We need to talk. Call me immediately. Dad, Beth, please pick up. It's important. Mom again. Where are you? We need you. My Aunt Linda. Honey, I don't know where you are, but your mother is losing her mind. Please call." And then, the one that made my hands shake. Carolyn is freaking out. The wedding is falling apart. Please come home. I scrolled through more messages, piecing together what had happened. The wedding planner had quit late Friday night after Carolyn had a meltdown and screamed at her in front of the entire rehearsal dinner. Amber, the maid of honor, had gotten severe food poisoning from the rehearsal dinner and was in the emergency room. The florist had delivered pink roses instead of white peonies. The caterer was threatening to walk out. Half the decorations hadn't arrived. And now, suddenly, they remembered I existed. Because I was the fixer. The one who solved problems. The responsible one. My mother's last text was the most telling. Bethany, please. We need your organizational skills. This is a family emergency. Carolyn needs her sister. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, feeling like I was watching a play where I knew all the lines but no longer wanted to perform. My phone rang in my hand. Dad. I stared at his name on the screen, my finger hovering over the decline button. Then something made me answer. Maybe I needed to hear it. Maybe I needed to hear them finally admit they needed me. Bethany, thank God. Dad's voice was ragged, panicked. I'd never heard him sound like this. Where are you? Why aren't you here? I'm in Iceland, Dad. Silence. Then, Iceland? What are you? Why would you? We need you here, sweetheart. It's Carolyn's wedding day, and everything is going wrong. I know. I got the messages. Then you'll come? We can get you on the next flight. We'll pay for everything. First class. Whatever you need. Just please. I closed my eyes. The old Bethany would already be packing, already be looking up flights, already be sacrificing her own needs to rescue everyone else. But that Bethany had boarded a plane to Iceland and left something behind. Dad. Why wasn't I invited to the wedding? He hesitated. Your mother, she thought. The truth, Dad. A long pause. I could hear chaos in the background. Someone crying, someone shouting about the caterer. Your mother said it would be easier without you there. That you and Carolyn haven't been close. That it was Carolyn's day. And she should have who she wants. There are 150 people there, Dad. It wasn't about space. I know, he said quietly. I should have said something. I should have stood up for you. But you know how your mother gets. And Carolyn was so sure. And I'm sorry, Beth. I'm really sorry. But we need you now. Please. The irony was so thick I could taste it. They didn't need me for the wedding. They needed me for the disaster. They needed my skills, my calm, my ability to fix things. They needed the parts of me they could use, while still not actually valuing me as a person. Dad, I can't just leave Iceland. I'm 5,000 miles away. I know it's far, but if you left now... No. The word came out stronger than I expected. No. I'm not coming. Bethany, please, your sister. My sister didn't want me at her wedding. You all made that very clear. You don't get to exclude me and then demand I rescue you. That's not how this works anymore. We made a mistake, Dad said, his voice cracking. We should have invited you. Your mother was wrong. But please, don't punish Carolyn for this. She's falling apart. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not saving everyone anymore. You all have to figure this out yourselves. Beth, I have to go, Dad. I hope the wedding works out. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something else. Something that felt almost like power. The calls kept coming. I declined them. Mom. Aunt Linda. Even Trevor's mother, a woman I'd never met. Somehow got my number and left a voicemail begging me to help because her son was devastated by the chaos. Then the text started getting more manipulative. Mom. I raised you better than this. Family helps family. Aunt Linda. Your grandmother would be so disappointed in you right now. A cousin I barely knew. Wow, really showing your true colors, aren't you? I turned off my phone and got dressed. I had a reservation at the Blue Lagoon, and I wasn't going to miss it for anything. The milky blue water was warm and perfect. I floated on my back, staring up at the gray sky, and felt every muscle in my body release tension I didn't even know I was carrying. Steam rose around me. Other tourists laughed and took photos. Someone's child shrieked with joy. I stayed for 3 hours. When I finally emerged, pruned and relaxed, I felt more like myself than I had in a decade. That evening, I went back to the guest house and allowed myself to turn on my phone. I told myself I wouldn't read the messages, but I was human. I looked. Most of them were more of the same. Guilt trips, accusations, demands. But then I saw one that made me stop breathing. A voice message from Carolyn. I almost didn't listen to it, but something made me press play. Her voice was raw, broken, nothing like the confident, dismissive tone she'd used for months. "Beth, I'm so sorry." She was crying. Really crying. "I don't know why I did this to you. Why I pushed you away. Mom kept saying you were jealous of me, that you'd ruin my day with your attitude, and I believed her. I believed her because it was easier than admitting I was being cruel. But you wouldn't have ruined anything. You never did. You were always the one who made everything better, and I took that for granted. I took you for granted." She paused, and I could hear her trying to catch her breath. "The wedding is a disaster. Everything is wrong. Amber is in the hospital. The planner quit. Nothing looks right. Trevor's family is upset. And I deserve it. I deserve all of it, because I was a terrible sister. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to help. I just needed you to know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you, Beth. I forgot that for a while, but I love you." The message ended. I played it again, and again. 3 times, listening to my little sister's voice crack with genuine remorse. For the first time, Carolyn sounded real. Not performative, not trying to be the perfect daughter or the flawless bride. Just real. I looked at the time. In California, it was 11 in the morning. The wedding ceremony was supposed to start at noon. In 1 hour, part of me wanted to call her back. Wanted to fix everything, even from 5,000 miles away. Wanted to tell her what to do about the flowers, the caterer, the decorations. I could do it. I could save the day remotely. But I didn't, because saving the day wasn't my job anymore. I sat on my bed, still holding my phone, tears running down my face. Not tears of sadness, exactly. Something more complicated. Grief. Maybe. For all the years I'd spent being the responsible one, the fixer, the one who swallowed her pain to keep everyone else comfortable, I called Sigrid. She answered on the second ring. "I need to talk to someone," I said. "Can I buy you coffee? I'll come to you. Where are you staying?" 20 minutes later, she was sitting on my guest house bed while I poured out the whole story. The calls, the messages, Carolyn's voicemail. She listened, nodding, occasionally handing me tissues from the box on the nightstand. When I finished, she asked, "What do you want to do? Not what they want you to do. Not what you think you should do. What do you, Bethany, actually want?" I'd never asked myself that question before. "Not really. I want to finish my trip," I said slowly. "I want to see more of Iceland. I want to keep feeling like this, like I matter, like I'm the main character in my own life, instead of a supporting role in everyone else's." "Then do that." "But my sister." "Your sister made choices. Your family made choices. Now they're experiencing the consequences of those choices. That's not your responsibility to fix. They'll hate me, maybe. Or maybe they'll finally see you." I thought about that for a long time after Sigrid left. Then, I did something I'd never done before. I recorded a video message. I set my phone up on the dresser, took a deep breath, and pressed record. "Hi everyone. I've gotten all your calls and messages. I know the wedding is in chaos. I know you're all panicking. and I want you to understand something. I'm not coming back. Not today. Not this weekend. I'm staying in Iceland. I paused, gathering my thoughts. You all made it very clear that I wasn't important enough to be at this wedding. Mom lied to me about it being small. Carolyn excluded me deliberately. None of you stood up for me. And now that things are falling apart, suddenly I'm essential. Suddenly I'm family. But that's not how this works. You can't treat someone as disposable and then demand they rescue you. My voice stayed steady, calm, strong. Carolyn, I got your message. I appreciate the apology. I really do. And I believe that you're sorry. But I need all of you to understand something. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not the person you call only when you're desperate. I'm worthy of respect and inclusion all the time, not just when it's convenient for you. I've spent my whole life making myself smaller, so you could all feel bigger. I'm done with that. I looked directly at the camera. I hope the wedding is beautiful. I really do. I'll be thinking of you. But I'm staying here. I'm choosing myself. And I'm not apologizing for that anymore. I stopped the recording, watched it once to make sure it said what I meant, and then sent it to the family group chat. Then I turned off my phone completely. No more checking. No more reading their responses. Done. The next morning, I woke early and joined a tour group heading to Skaftafell for a glacier hike. The wedding had already happened. 6 time zones away. I wondered how it had gone, but I didn't let myself dwell on it. The glacier was breathtaking, pure blue ice, ancient and powerful. Our guide, a young Icelandic man named John, led us across crevasses, pointing out ice formations that had taken centuries to form. I felt small in the best way, like my problems were tiny against the scope of geological time. At one point, standing on top of the glacier, looking out over the vast ice field, I felt something shift inside me. Not just peace, something stronger, certainty. I had made the right choice. When we got back to Reykjavik that evening, I turned on my phone. Part of me regretted it immediately. 347 notifications. I scrolled through them, my stomach churning. The family group chat was on fire. My video had sparked a war. Some people were defending me. Others were attacking. But one long message from my cousin Jennifer stood out. Okay. I'm going to tell you all what actually happened at the wedding since no one else seems willing to be honest. It was a disaster. Carolyn had a complete meltdown before the ceremony. She couldn't stop crying, and not happy tears. The ceremony started 45 minutes late. Half the guests were already drunk from the cocktail hour. The flowers were wrong, the food was cold, and wrong because the caterer had to substitute everything last minute. Trevor's family looked miserable. During the reception, Trevor and Carolyn got into a huge fight in front of everyone because he told her she was being difficult and ungrateful and that this whole mess was her fault for being so controlling. My hand covered my mouth as I kept reading. The wedding photos are going to be awful because Carolyn looks swollen from crying and Trevor looks angry in half of them. It was honestly one of the most uncomfortable events I've ever been to. And before any of you blame Beth for this, remember that she wasn't the one who planned a wedding she couldn't handle. She wasn't the one who treated the vendors like servants. She wasn't the one who excluded her own sister. This disaster was entirely self-made. But the message that really got me was the Facebook post my mother had made. Someone had screenshotted it and sent it to the group chat. Patricia had written, "When you raise children, you hope they'll be there for each other in times of need. Some children understand family loyalty. Others choose selfishness. Today my daughter abandoned her sister on the most important day of her life. I'm heartbroken by this betrayal." The post had 63 comments. Most from people who didn't know the full story, offering sympathy to my poor mother. I felt the old guilt rising, the old voice telling me I was wrong, I was bad, I was selfish. But then I remembered Sigrid's words. I remembered standing on that glacier. I remembered every time I'd sacrificed myself and gotten nothing but more demands in return. I opened Facebook and wrote my own post. Public, so everyone could see. I've seen the posts about me abandoning my family. Let me be very clear about what actually happened. I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. I was told it was too small and intimate. I later discovered there were over 150 guests. I was deliberately excluded. When I found out, I chose to take a trip to Iceland instead of sitting at home feeling hurt and rejected. When things went wrong at the wedding, suddenly I was needed. Suddenly I was family. But you can't exclude someone and then demand they drop everything to save you from the consequences of your own choices. I took a breath and kept typing. I love my family, but I'm done being the person who's only valued in a crisis. I'm done being the fixer, the responsible one, the one who sacrifices everything while being treated like I don't matter. I'm in Iceland. I'm healing. I'm discovering what it feels like to put myself first for once in my life. I wish Carolyn and Trevor a happy marriage, but I won't apologize for having boundaries, and I won't accept guilt for refusing to be treated as disposable. I posted it before I could second-guess myself. The response was immediate. Comments poured in, some from distant relatives criticizing me, but more, so many more, from friends and even family members I barely knew, sharing their own stories of being the family scapegoat, the overlooked one, the one expected to give everything, and be grateful for crumbs. My Aunt Linda, Patricia's own sister, commented, "Patricia, you owe Bethany an apology. We've all watched you favor Carolyn for years. This didn't come out of nowhere." Other family members started speaking up, sharing times they'd witnessed the dynamic. Times I'd been overlooked, criticized, expected to do more, while being appreciated less. Within 2 hours, my mother had deleted her original post. My phone rang. "Dad," I answered. "Bethany." His voice was different than it had been during our last call. Quieter, sadder. "I read your post, and you're right. About all of it." I said nothing, letting him continue. "Your mother and I, we failed you. For a long time. We always thought you were so capable, so strong, that you didn't need us the way Carolyn did. But that was wrong. That was us taking advantage of your strength instead of nurturing it. We punished you for being independent, by making you even more invisible. I see that now. I'm sorry, Beth. I'm really, truly sorry." I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. "Thank you for saying that. Your mother is. She's having a hard time right now. The wedding didn't go well. Carolyn and Trevor are barely speaking. She's realizing that maybe pushing you away wasn't the best strategy. I'm not coming back early, Dad. I know. I wouldn't expect you to. I just wanted you to know that I hear you. And when you do come home, if you're willing, I'd like to do better. Be a real father to you." We talked for a few more minutes. It wasn't a complete healing, but it was a start. A real one. After we hung up, I saw a text from Carolyn. "Can we talk tomorrow? Please? I need to really talk to you." I texted back. "Okay. Video call tomorrow evening your time." Then I put my phone away and went to watch the sunset over the harbor. The next day, I spent the morning exploring Reykjavik's art museums and galleries. I'd always loved art, but had stopped making time for it years ago. Always too busy helping everyone else. Standing in front of a massive canvas splashed with blues and grays that somehow captured the exact feeling of the Icelandic landscape, I felt something old and dormant stir inside me. I'd studied design because it was practical, marketable. But I'd wanted to be a painter. I'd hidden that dream so deep I'd almost forgotten it existed. At 3 o'clock California time, 8 o'clock in Iceland, I set up my laptop in my guest house room and called Carolyn. She answered immediately. She looked awful. No makeup, hair in a messy bun, eyes swollen from crying. She looked younger somehow, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen her. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." For a moment we just looked at each other across the digital divide. "Thank you for calling," she said finally. "I wasn't sure you would. You asked to talk. So talk." She took a shaky breath. "The wedding was a disaster. You probably heard. I heard. Trevor's family hated everything. The ceremony was late. The food was wrong. People left early. The photographer got maybe 10 decent shots all day. Because I couldn't stop crying. She paused. But that's not even the worst part. I waited. Trevor told me last night that he's been having doubts about marrying me for months. He said, watching everything fall apart made him see our whole relationship clearly. He said, I'm too much like Mom. Controlling, critical, never satisfied. He said he spent the entire reception wondering if he'd made a huge mistake. My stomach dropped. Carolyn, we're supposed to leave for our honeymoon to Bali tomorrow. He canceled it this morning. He said he needs space to think about whether he even wants to stay married. Her voice cracked. Beth, I think my marriage might be over before it even really started. I should have felt vindicated. Some part of me wanted to. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for my sister. Sad for all the years we'd wasted not being real with each other. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Don't be. I deserve this. She wiped her eyes. I need to tell you something. Something I've never said out loud. Okay, I've been jealous of you my entire life. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Jealous? Of me? You were the favorite. You were perfect. And, no, I was the performing seal, Carolyn said bitterly. I was the one who did everything Mom and Dad wanted, because I was terrified of disappointing them. You were always so yourself. So independent. You didn't need their approval. You didn't need anyone's approval. You went to design school, even though Dad thought it was impractical. You moved to Seattle even though Mom cried about you being so far away. You lived your life on your terms. She was crying harder now. I built my entire existence around being what they wanted. Perfect grades, perfect boyfriend, perfect career. I picked Trevor because he looked good on paper. Because he's a lawyer from a good family. Because Mom loved him. Not because I loved him. Not really. I don't even know if I know who I am without their voices in my head telling me who I should be. I felt something crack open in my chest. All these years, I'd thought Carolyn had it easy. I'd thought she was the lucky one. But she'd been in a prison too. Just a different kind. Why did you push me away? I asked gently. For the wedding? For everything this past year? Because you reminded me that I was living a lie, she whispered. Every time I saw you, I felt this awful feeling like I was failing at something. And instead of dealing with that, instead of looking at my own life, I convinced myself you were the problem. Mom made it easy. She's been saying for years that you're jealous, that you judge her choices, that you make everything harder. I believed her because it was easier than admitting I was miserable. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked, like we hadn't since we were kids sharing a bedroom and telling each other secrets in the dark. Carolyn told me about her anxiety, about how she'd been in therapy for 3 months, but hadn't told anyone because she was afraid of seeming weak. About how Trevor had proposed and she'd said yes even though she'd had a panic attack in the bathroom afterward. I told her about the years of feeling invisible, about being the family workhorse, about how I'd lost pieces of myself trying to earn love that apparently had conditions I could never meet. Can you forgive me? She asked finally. I can, I said. But Carolyn, things have to change. I can't go back to being everyone's safety net while being treated like I don't matter. I can't do that anymore. I don't want you to. I don't want to be who I've been either. She looked at me with something like hope. When you get back, can we try again? Like, really try? As actual sisters? Not as whatever weird dynamic we've been stuck in? Yeah, I said. I'd like that. After we hung up, I felt exhausted but also lighter. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for miles and finally set it down. I extended my trip by another week. I wanted more time, more Iceland, more me. Over the next few days, I explored the West Fjords, drove through landscapes so beautiful they didn't seem real. I hiked to remote hot springs where I was the only person for miles. I watched whales breach in Husavik, their massive bodies rising from the cold Atlantic like miracles. And I drew. I bought watercolors and a pad of good paper, and I drew everything. The mountains, the waterfalls, the tiny churches perched on hillsides, the sheep dotting the green fields. I hadn't drawn anything except corporate logos and website mock-ups in 5 years. My hands remembered the movements. My eyes remembered how to see. On my second to last day in Iceland, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Akureyri, working on a watercolor of the fjord, when I got an email notification. The subject line read, "Gallery Exhibition, Opportunity." My heart started pounding before I even opened it. Dear Bethany, my name is Claire Hoffman, and I own the Cascadia Gallery in Seattle. I've been following your Iceland journey on Instagram, and I'm absolutely captivated by your watercolors and sketches. Your work has a raw, emotional quality that I think would resonate deeply with our audience. We're planning an exhibition in February called Reclaimed Narratives, Women Finding Their Voice, and I would love to feature your Iceland series. Would you be interested in discussing this further? I read the email 3 times. Then I called Sigrid, who I'd been texting throughout my trip. I got offered a gallery show, I blurted when she answered. She screamed, actual screaming, then laughing. I told you Iceland was good for the soul. When is it? February, in Seattle. It's a show about women finding their voice. Perfect. You have to do it. I haven't done real art in 5 years. What if I'm not good enough? Bethany, Sigrid said firmly. You flew to Iceland instead of watching your family exclude you. You set boundaries with people you've never stood up to before. You chose yourself when it was the hardest thing in the world to do. If you can do that, you can do anything. Say yes to the show. I looked at my watercolor of the fjord, at the way I'd captured the light on the water, the mood of the landscape. Okay, I said. I'll say yes. That evening, I got a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was small, uncertain. Nothing like her usual authoritative tone. Bethany, I've been talking to my therapist. She's been helping me see some things about how I've parented you and your sister, how I've treated you. I'm beginning to understand that I projected a lot of my own issues onto you. My own mother always criticized me, and instead of breaking that cycle, I passed it on, especially to you. She paused, and I could hear her breathing shakily. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know I've hurt you deeply, for a long time. But I want you to know, I'm working on it. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. And when you come home, if you're willing, I'd like to try to be a real mother to you, the kind you deserved all along. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't everything I needed. But it was something. A beginning. I saved the voicemail. I'd decide later how to respond. For now, I was still in Iceland, still choosing myself, still learning what it felt like to take up space in my own life. I flew back to Seattle on a gray November afternoon. The city felt both familiar and strange, like I was seeing it with new eyes. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it, but it felt different too. Smaller, maybe. Or maybe I'd just gotten bigger. I spent the first week back organizing my Iceland sketches and watercolors, scanning them, thinking about the gallery show. Claire and I had been emailing, and she wanted 15 to 20 pieces. I had the work. I just had to trust that it was good enough. My family gave me space, mostly. Dad sent a text, checking in every few days. Nothing pushy. Just hope you're doing well and thinking of you. Mom was quiet, which was unusual for her. Carolyn texted occasionally with updates. She and Trevor were in marriage counseling. She'd moved back in with our parents temporarily. She was trying to figure out who she was outside of being the perfect daughter. The family group chat, which had been a war zone, went quiet. It was like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what happened next. 3 weeks after I got back, I agreed to meet Dad for coffee. We met at a quiet cafe near Pike Place Market. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "Thanks for asking." We made small talk for a few minutes. Then he slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a check. A big one. $15,000. "Dad, what?" "It's what we should have given you for college. It's not enough to make up for the whole tuition, I know. But it's a start. It's what we gave Carolyn, and you deserve the same." I stared at the check, feeling emotions I couldn't name. "You don't have to accept it," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how unfair we were. How we took advantage of your independence instead of supporting it." "I'll take it," I said. "Not because I need it, but because you're right. I deserved it then, and accepting it now means you're acknowledging that." He nodded, looking relieved. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. He told me about his own father, who'd been critical and distant. How he'd promised himself he'd be different, but had somehow fallen into the same patterns. How he'd let Mom take the lead on parenting because he didn't know how to do it better, and that was a cowardice he regretted. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase anything, but it was real. A month after that, Mom asked if she could come to Seattle to visit. Just her. No Dad. No Carolyn. I almost said no, but something made me say yes. She came on a Saturday. I met her at her hotel, and we walked through the sculpture park along the waterfront. The December air was cold and damp. Typical Seattle weather. "Your apartment is nice," she said. We'd stopped there first so she could drop off her bag. "Thanks. I never really looked at it before. When I visited last year, I was so focused on telling you about Carolyn's engagement that I didn't notice your art on the walls. You're talented, Bethany. It was such a small thing, but it made my throat tight." "I got an email from Claire at the gallery," I said. "The show is confirmed for February 10th. I'd like to come, if that's okay." "Okay." We walked in silence for a while. Then Mom stopped at a bench overlooking the water and sat down. I sat next to her. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to really hear it, not just let me off the hook." I waited. "When you were born, I had severe postpartum depression. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I just knew I felt disconnected from you, like I was watching someone else's life. Your dad's mother helped a lot those first few months. By the time I started feeling better, I felt like I'd missed some crucial bonding period, like you didn't need me." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Then, when Carolyn was born, I didn't have the depression. I bonded with her immediately. And I think some part of me tried to make up for what I'd missed with you by being everything for her. Which was wrong. Which was so wrong. You needed me just as much. You deserved just as much. But I convinced myself you were fine. You were independent. You had it handled. And then that became the story I told myself to justify treating you differently." I felt tears on my cheeks. "I'm not telling you this to make excuses," Mom continued. "I'm telling you because you deserve to know it wasn't about you. It was never about you not being enough. It was about me failing you from the very beginning and then spending 28 years trying to pretend I hadn't. I needed you," I whispered. "I needed you so much, and I convinced myself I didn't, because it hurt less than admitting you weren't there. I know, baby. I know. And I'm so sorry." We sat there crying together, watching the ferries cross the Sound, until the cold drove us to find a warm restaurant. Over lunch, she told me she was in therapy twice a week, that she was on antidepressants for the first time in her life, that her therapist was helping her understand her patterns, her need for control, her inability to see me clearly. "I can't undo the past," she said, "but I want to do better going forward, if you'll let me." "I need time," I said, "and I need you to respect my boundaries. No more guilt trips. No more expecting me to fix everything. No more comparing me to Carolyn. Deal." It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation, but it was honest, and that was worth something. Carolyn came to visit 2 weeks later. She'd filed for an annulment. Trevor had moved out. She was seeing a therapist 3 times a week and had quit her job at the marketing firm she'd hated. I'm moving to Portland, she told me over dinner at my apartment. Starting over. I got a job at a nonprofit that does art therapy with kids. It pays half what I was making, but I actually care about it. That's amazing, Carolyn. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing. It's harder than I thought. She smiled sadly. But also kind of exciting? Like, I'm 25 and I'm finally asking myself what I actually want. Better late than never, right? Right. We were rebuilding slowly, carefully, like people learning to trust after betrayal. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes old patterns crept back in. But we caught them faster now. We called them out. The gallery show was in 6 weeks. I worked on my pieces every day, refining them, adding new ones. The series was coming together. Claire had titled it Distance. Finding yourself in exile. And the more I worked, the more I understood what the pieces were really about. They weren't just pretty watercolors of Iceland. They were portraits of freedom, of choosing yourself, of the moment when you finally stop apologizing for taking up space. Opening night of the gallery show arrived cold and clear. I got to Cascadia Gallery 3 hours early to help with the final setup. My pieces were hung on crisp white walls, each one lit perfectly, each one telling part of the story. There was First Flight, a watercolor of Reykjavik from the airplane window, all possibility and fear. Blue Lagoon, capturing the moment I chose peace over chaos. Glacier Summit, showing the vast ice field where I'd felt my smallness and my strength simultaneously. And my favorite, Northern Lights over Angvellir, the piece I'd painted from memory, trying to capture the feeling of standing between 2 continental plates, literally and metaphorically, between my old life and my new one. Claire walked through with me, adjusting lights, checking placement. These are stunning, Bethany, really. I think people are going to connect with them deeply. I hope so. They will. There's honesty in them. You can't fake that. People started arriving at 6. Friends from work, neighbors, people I'd met through design projects over the years. They wandered through the gallery, studying the pieces, reading the small plaques I'd written explaining each one. At 6:15, my family arrived. I saw them through the gallery window before they saw me. Dad in a suit, looking uncomfortable but proud. Mom in a blue dress, holding Dad's hand. And Carolyn, wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair shorter than I'd ever seen it, looking more like herself than she had in years. They came inside, and there was an awkward moment where we all just looked at each other. Then Mom stepped forward and hugged me. A real hug. Not the performative kind she used to give at family gatherings. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." They walked through the exhibition together, stopping at each piece. I watched them from across the room, trying not to feel too vulnerable. This was my story, my journey, and they were seeing all of it. Carolyn stopped in front of the message, a piece I'd painted after our video call. It showed a phone lying on a guest house bed, screen glowing, with the Icelandic landscape visible through the window behind it. The plaque read, "The moment I realized love without respect isn't really love at all." She stood there for a long time. Then she turned and found me in the crowd. She mouthed, "I'm sorry," and I nodded. We'd said it before, but some things need to be said more than once. The gallery filled up. 50 people, then 80, then over 100. Claire had to bring out more wine. People asked me questions about Iceland, about the trip, about why I'd gone. I told them the truth. About being excluded, about choosing myself, about learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Several people told me their own stories. A woman in her 40s who'd stopped speaking to her mother after years of emotional abuse. A young man who'd skipped his brother's wedding because his family refused to acknowledge his husband. An older woman who'd taken a solo trip to New Zealand after her divorce and said it saved her life. We were all connected by the same thread. The courage it takes to choose yourself when everyone else expects you to choose them. At 8:30, as the crowd started to thin, Claire tapped a glass and asked for everyone's attention. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. This exhibition, Distance, Finding Yourself in Exile, is special to me because it represents something we don't talk about enough, the strength it takes to set boundaries with people we love. Bethany's work is beautiful technically, but what makes it extraordinary is the emotional truth in every piece. These aren't just landscapes, they're self-portraits. They're maps of becoming. So please join me in celebrating not just a talented artist, but a brave woman who knew when to save herself. Everyone clapped. I felt my face get hot, felt tears threatening. Claire handed me the microphone. I hadn't planned to speak, but suddenly I wanted to. Thank you all for being here. This show, these pieces, they came from the hardest decision I've ever made. My sister was getting married, and I wasn't invited. And instead of sitting at home feeling sorry for myself, I bought a ticket to Iceland. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I put my own well-being above everyone else's expectations. I looked at my family, standing together near Glacier Summit. It wasn't easy. It hurt. It's still hurting sometimes. But it was necessary. Because I'd spent 28 years being the person everyone could count on. Except myself. I'd spent 28 years earning love that should have been freely given. And I was tired. So I left. And in leaving, I found myself. I found my art again. I found my voice. I found out what it feels like to matter in my own life. My voice cracked, but I kept going. The lesson I want to share is this. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away. Not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself enough to refuse mistreatment. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, reciprocity, and genuine care. When you're always the one sacrificing, fixing, and accommodating, you're not in a relationship. You're in a pattern of self-abandonment. I saw several people nodding, wiping their eyes. The moment I chose myself over their crisis, everything shifted. My absence taught them what my presence never could. That I'm not a supporting character in their story. I'm the protagonist of my own. And when you finally claim that role, people have two choices. Evolve with you, or exit your narrative. Either way, you win. Because choosing yourself is never the wrong choice. It's the only choice that leads to real, lasting peace. The room was quiet. Then someone started clapping, and soon everyone joined in. After the formal part of the evening ended, my family stayed to help clean up. We worked together quietly, throwing away empty cups, straightening chairs. It felt ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Just a family, doing a simple task together. No drama, no crisis, just being. Before they left, Dad pulled me aside. Your grandmother Helen would have loved this show. She always said you had an artist's soul. I wish I'd listened to her. She knew? She knew everything. She told me once, a few months before she died, that I was making a mistake with you. That I was taking you for granted, she said. That girl has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known, but one day she's going to realize she deserves better than crumbs. I didn't understand what she meant then. I do now. I hugged him tightly. I miss her. Me too. After everyone left, I stood alone in the gallery, looking at my work. 22 pieces, each one a part of my journey. Tomorrow, some of them would sell. People would take them home, hang them on their walls, find their own meanings in my Iceland. But tonight, they were still mine, still telling my story. I pulled out my journal, the one I'd carried through Iceland, and kept writing in since. I turned to a fresh page and wrote the lesson that had become my truth. I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself enough to refuse mistreatment. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect, reciprocity, and genuine care. When you're always the one sacrificing, fixing, and accommodating, you're not in a relationship. You're in a pattern of self-abandonment. The moment I chose myself over their crisis, everything shifted. My absence taught them what my presence never could, that I am not a supporting character in their story. I am the protagonist of my own. And when you finally claim that role, people have two choices: evolve with you or exit your narrative. Either way, you win. Because choosing yourself is never the wrong choice. It's the only choice that leads to real, lasting peace. I closed the journal and looked at my favorite piece one last time. Northern Lights over Ingvalir. The painting showed the aurora borealis dancing over the Rift Valley, green and purple light illuminating the darkness. But if you looked closely, you could see a small figure standing on the viewing platform, looking up at the sky, looking up at possibility. That figure was me. Will always be me. The woman who flew to Iceland instead of watching her family exclude her. The woman who chose herself when it was the hardest thing in the world to do. The woman who found her art again, her voice again, herself again. The woman standing in front of her work in a Seattle gallery, finally home in her own skin. I turned off the lights and locked up. Outside, the February night was crisp and clear. I could see stars between the buildings. Not as bright as Iceland's, but beautiful nonetheless. I walked home slowly, savoring the feeling. Peace, pride, freedom, the knowledge that I'd done the hardest thing and survived. More than survived. Flourished. My phone buzzed. A text from Sigrid in Iceland. Saw the photos from your show on Instagram. I'm crying. You did it. You really did it. So proud of you, my friend. I texted back. Thank you for everything. You saved my life that day in the cafe. No, she replied. You saved your own life. I just witnessed it, and maybe that was the truest thing of all. Nobody could save me but me. Nobody could choose me but me. That had always been true. I just finally learned it in time. I thought about the woman who'd boarded that plane to Reykjavik, scared and hurt and desperate for escape. And I thought about who I was now. Not scared, not desperate, just clear, just sure, just me. The journey from there to here hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. It had been worth it. I am Bethany. I am an artist. I am a daughter and sister who knows her worth. I am someone who chooses herself without apology. And that, finally, is enough. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose yourself over family expectations? Have you ever walked away from a situation where you were being treated as less than you deserved? How did you find the courage to set boundaries with people you love? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations, and share it with someone who might need the reminder that choosing yourself is not selfish. It's survival. It's the beginning of everything good. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it brought you some peace, some clarity, or at least the knowledge that you're not alone in your struggles. May you find the courage to be the protagonist of your own story. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.